Call of Juarez is a series I stumbled upon a few years ago. They're these action-adventure games set in the old American West. You get to shoot, duel, and lasso like any good Western story. I always felt that these games deserve more recognition than they get, so in this video I'd like to take you through the 3 games in the series. Now there is a 4th one that has seemingly vanished off the face of the earth, so I haven't played it. But I will talk about it. Anyways, let's go. The game was developed by Techlands Studios. It was intended to be a fast-paced arcade shooter, but the studio saw a bit of an opportunity with the concept. You see, this is in the early 2000s. The shooter market was oversaturated with World War II and sci-fi shooters. Therefore, they decided to deepen the experience by focusing on plot and characters. Additionally, the player would do more than just shoot, incorporating stealth, chase, and platforming sections. On September 15th, the game was released to fairly positive reviews. It was a great concept with good execution, but a bit rough around the edges. The movement felt a bit clunky, which isn't optimal for a game with platforming. The stealth sections were also criticized for being boring. Due to this, the developers made an update in 2007 which replaced much of the stealth with chase scenes. So now that you know a bit about that, we can get into it. To start off, we're introduced to Billy. He's a young man who went out to find the lost gold of Juarez. He didn't succeed and is now heading back to his hometown. He's looking forward to seeing his mother again. His stepfather, Thomas, is a dick. His poor treatment of him was actually the catalyst for him venturing out to find the gold. Although he didn't find it, he did find love with a girl named Molly. You hop through these cliffs, the map design is gorgeous by the way. Then you get eyes on Hope, Billy's hometown. You go down this cliff and end up at this guy's farm. This is your first stealth section. It's fine right here, but during these, enemies will just kind of pace and then stand and stare. They don't really have any ambient animations. The stealth is also very bare bones. You get to the barn and get a gun before doing some target practice. After destroying this poor man's bottles, you can venture on. Shortly after, you encounter dangerous wildlife. When wandering in the wild, you will randomly get jumped by wolves. When you close in, Billy speaks of a Reverend Ray, who is the meanest of all the inhabitants in Hope. You get a not nice welcome from the sheriff who confiscates your gun. When you get inside though, your first objective is getting a gun. You walk around all paranoid until you meet a saloon girl named Susie. Billy knows her from before and therefore he knows that she has a Derringer pistol in her room. One problem: this pimp dude won't let you in. You end up climbing using a rope. You'll use the lasso for quite a few of the platforming sections. While Susie is out making sure the guy from earlier is busy, you go through her stuff and take the Derringer. There's no ammo though, and before you can look for it, Susie returns. Before you can get too comfortable though, you get busted and have to run. Pretty soon the whole town is up in arms looking for you. They chase you back into the wilderness. You swing, hop, and climb away from them. Here I noticed how clunky the platforming actually feels. It's by no means bad, it's doable, but it's something you just want to finish quickly so you can continue the game. You arrive at this shack with an armed farmer. You gotta go in and steal some ammo. As you get in, the guy spots you and I died quite a lot in the first seconds of the following sequence. Anyways, now you got ammo and you can continue toward Billy's mom's place. When you arrive, Billy thinks of all the good things his mom used to cook, but then he hears his mom screaming and believes Thomas to be doing something. Now you meet the second playable character in this game. Reverend Ray McCall, brother of Billy's stepfather. As his name suggests, he's a very religious man. He has a dark past, but we have yet to hear details. He believes it's his mission to free this town from evil. You spawn in a church about to give mass. The people are not very fond of Ray's sermon. He gets heckled multiple times by the town pimp. Eventually the sermon is interrupted fully by this woman who informs Ray that gunshots were heard at Thomas's farm. You hurry there to find both Thomas and Billy's mother dead with the writing Call of Juarez written above. He sees Billy run off and assumes he committed the murders. You chase him for a bit through the cliffs, but his youthful agility helps him get away from you. Ray decides to go back and tell the sheriff, only to find that looters have started ransacking Thomas's farm. You kick their ass, and I must say the melee combat is actually really fun. The ragdoll physics really adds to a knockout blow, but the hitboxes are almost ridiculous. Unless you're standing right up against them, you'll miss. Afterwards, Ray asks God why this could happen and prays for help. Ray decides that it's time to dust off the old guns and go after Billy. He believes that God wants him to be a sword and strike down Billy. When opening the church doors, the town sheriff tries to talk you out of killing him, saying it's the job of the law. But Ray says he represents a higher law. He tries to take your guns, but when he refuses to arrest Ray, one of the townsmen shoots him. Now the fight begins. You go into town where you learn to quick draw. The game goes into slow motion and you shoot when the crosshairs are on an enemy. The gunplay is super fun. You walk around with the two revolvers, mowing down everyone in your path. Again, the ragdolls add a lot. I love good ragdoll physics. Eventually someone tries to essay the sheriff's wife, but you climb up to save her. Being an old man, Ray doesn't have the same agility as Billy. He can climb obstacles very well, but you fight across the balconies until you get to the sheriff's house in time to save the wife. The bandits are going to the jail to free other bandits and steal guns. She gives you the keys to the jail door. You fight down the street to the jail where the bandits have just made entry. You fight your way inside where the bandits lock the door behind you. They attempt to smoke you out, but you enter the barn next door from the roof. When you leave, the fight picks up again. You go through houses and rooftops and eventually you get the shotgun. Thankfully in this game, shotguns have similar range to their real-life counterparts. Eventually you get to the saloon where you meet the pimp dude again. Clyde is his name. After dodging dynamite and defeating his goons, you light the saloon on fire. Eventually you have a duel with Clyde. You gotta wait for the signal and then flick your mouse to draw. It's cool, but pretty bare bones in this game. There's not a lot to it. After winning, Reverend Ray has a whole monologue which basically boils down to Billy is as good as dead. Now we go back to Billy. Billy's on the run. He says he didn't kill nobody, but they'll hang him either way. He's gonna try to catch a train by the mine that goes to San Jose where Molly is. You venture through the gloomy night, climbing, swinging, and fending off wolves. You spot the train. You get a bow and spot the entrance to the mine. There are robbers plundering the mine currently though. If they spot you, they'll end you. Now you gotta sneak through. I must say the bow is super fucking fun. Time slows down and you have a clear view of your kill, and it's silent. It's so satisfying to land some cool kills with it. The level is also nice and open. The atmosphere is also excellent with the gloomy darkness over the place. The storm slowly picks up as you close in on the train. Toward the end, you have to hold your ground until the train comes. As the train closes in, the bandits begin dropping at random. That's when Reverend Ray emerges from the mine. You escape in time though. Now we get Reverend Ray's perspective. He's tracked Billy to the mine. This mission is super fun. You go around the mine and blow everybody away with a shotgun. It does have difficult segments, but all in all, it's just awesome. It also shows you the different playstyle of Ray and Billy. Billy is agile, nimble, and stealthy. Ray is a complete tank, a powerful force of nature which complements his whole plotline very well. The level is quite vertical. You'll be fighting up and down a lot, and the cram interiors make the weapons feel even more powerful. Eventually you make it to the train where you watch Billy escape. Ray tries to catch up with the train, but then the leader of the bandits steps out and challenges you to a duel. He's a bit bitter about the whole butchering all his men thing. You shoot him down. In his final moments, he asks for God's forgiveness, and Reverend Ray listens. He says the train will be robbed. They're gonna blow up a bridge. You walk through a tunnel to find a wounded guard. The train is being robbed. You gotta go after them. You fight along the tracks until you reach the train. Now you gotta get to the locomotive. You go through wagons and these narrow ravines, all while bandits are harassing you. You get to the front where some guys are fighting the bandits. You fend off more bandits and a Gatling gun before entering the carriages. You go through the carriages and deal with another Gatling gun, and then it's your turn on the Gatling. And this thing just mows down the attackers. When you open the last door, you find the soldiers that are defending the train. They're pinned in the carriage, and they've put up explosives out by some barricades. The sappers are dead though. Now you have to go out and blow them. After dealing with that, you push on through the train. You see this guy who has a hostage. He says he'll shoot if you come closer, but he leaves immediately, so I don't know how he wants to enforce it. You get to a barricaded door where you gotta snipe it open. Eventually you go through here and you see the guy again as he throws the woman off the bridge. But thankfully, after blowing him away, you can help her up. You make it to the locomotive. Ray asks the engineer what happened to the kid on the roof. The soldiers tried to arrest him, but he escaped. He ran towards a farm in the area. Before you can leave again, you gotta shoot this bandit in a duel. We're back with Billy. He's scared of Reverend Ray and he's rushing to see Molly. But Molly's father is not a very big fan of Billy. After dealing with wolves and taking in the scenery, you arrive at this ranch where Billy intends to steal a horse. But you also need a saddle. You have to sneak into this guy's house. Here the stealth NPC thing gets very apparent. The guy keeps walking in and out of his house like he's continuously forgetting why he went in there. Anyways, you get the horse and escape the farm. Not long after, you realize you're in Apache territory. You deal with these guys that have just sacked this coach. Now you're on Apache land. You end up sneaking through the countryside using ambush tactics on them. This part is so fun. The bow really shines here. The many ways you can attack and the beautiful world design is what makes this level so cool. After fighting through the treacherous countryside, you make it to Molly's town. This next part can get a bit tricky. You gotta sneak through the town without alerting the townsfolk. They're in the middle of their day, so there's quite a few. Eventually you enter Molly's house and get to her room. Here you're interrupted by this guy named Chad. He challenges you to a scrap. After beating him thoroughly, Molly comes out and stops it. Billy explains that he went home and found Thomas and his mother murdered. The Reverend saw him and now everyone thinks he did it. She tells him he should have told the truth and stuff. Then her father shows up. Because Molly loves Billy, he'll let him leave alive, but tells him to never come back. The shooting interrupts him as the Reverend strolls into town. We're back in Ray's shoes. He's tracking down Billy. You shoot your way through the Apaches the same way Billy came. Eventually you encounter these guys. They're Texas Rangers who's out to arrest Billy. They're about to hit the Ferguson Ranch, Molly's father's ranch. You help them in the assault. You see Billy and Molly run away as the fighting starts. You get inside where Ferguson is held at gunpoint. You go upstairs, but Billy escapes. You fight through the barn and get into the cornfield. This part is quite interesting. The enemies will hide in the corn and ambush you as you make your way through. You chase Billy a bit more and catch him on this cliff. You shoot and he falls into the river. After shooting Billy, you hear Molly scream at the ranch. You go to check it out. You find these two. They admit they aren't rangers, but they are after the boy. They used Reverend Ray, but now they don't need him anymore. Now you got a duel of both of them at the same time. It's a fun way to mix things up with the dueling. After winning, you walk up to a wounded Ferguson. He says they kidnapped his daughter. Ray asks if he really is a rustler, but he's just a simple rancher. He was tricked into assaulting a random farm so these bandits could plunder and abduct. You hurry after them down to the river. Once you get there, they've already set sail. Ray curses his ignorance. He did what he thought was right in the name of God. He questions if Billy was innocent too. He vows to save Molly at any cost. When Billy was a kid, his mother gave him a medallion. This medallion was meant to shield him from evil. Billy survived and you're back here. A nice Native American man helped you out of the river. Billy quickly realizes that he lost his medallion. The man who rescued you is named Calm Water. He believes you were brought to him for a reason. He asks you to hunt 3 rabbits for him. He tells you to use the bow. Now you go out after them. It's fun to actually shoot the bow, but this part is very tedious. When you return, the place is on fire and you must quickly extinguish it. Calm Water will now listen to your story. He asks why you don't just confront Ray. He says if you keep running, you'll be forever helpless. Then he asks you to retrieve a feather from an eagle's nest atop a mountain. This part is pure platforming. You have to climb the treacherous mountain while an eagle tries to push you off. This whole section relies on a part of the game that is quite clunky, so not my favorite, but the view is nice. After retrieving the feather, you return to Calm Water. When you get there, you find that the bandits from Ferguson Farm has caught up and murdered Calm Water. You get knocked out. Ray is devastated about what happened at the ranch, but he's determined to make it right. He's chasing them down the river. You spot their camp, go down there and let him have it. They try to escape with Molly in a stagecoach, so you gotta get a horse and go after them. This next part is a chase sequence. You gotta deal with bandits on horses while taking fire from the coach. Occasionally you'll dismount to take on a whole group of them. As you go up this incline, you end up face to face with another Gatling gun. You storm through the next settlement like a damn force of nature. That's when this guy shows up. He challenges you to a duel and loses. Ray interrogates him about the girl's whereabouts. The dying man simply says Juarez. Billy's mother used to tell him about the lost gold of Juarez. He was told a legend to find where it is. Billy is tied to a pole in this cell thing. You meet Billy's father. This is Juarez. Juarez explains how Billy's mother ran from him with Thomas while he was yet to be born. Juarez wants the medallion that Billy lost because it's the key to finding the gold of Juarez. He believes that Billy is trying to keep it from him. He begins beating you and Molly is dragged into the room. He tells you to bring him the medallion or he'll give her to the men. He gives you until sundown. You ride off to look for it. You meet this young boy in a cemetery. He offers you 100 pesos if you help bury his father. You have a funeral, but after, the boy reveals that he doesn't have 100 pesos. In fact, he has none. He does give you this key to the old church where you'll probably find something of value. The church is pretty creepy, but when you get to the graveyard, you find 3 graves, like in the riddle about the gold of Juarez. The hole on the crosses are the shape of Billy's medallion. He remembers the riddle and realizes that he has to put the medallion in the 3rd grave. Now you lost it, but Billy remembers it clearly. So he imagines it in the hole and finds out that this stone is the entrance. Now you do a little more platforming to knock over another stone, which then rolls and moves the entrance. You found the cave in which the gold of Juarez resides. In this next level, you just hop around dealing with spiders and dodging these traps, but before long, you make it to the gold of Juarez. Before you can fully take in the glory of the treasure, Juarez pushes you out of the way. He followed you here. He's overcome with awe, but quickly accuses you of betrayal and says you'll die like your mother now. The shooting starts and you gotta hurry out. You go over obstacles and weave through tight passages until you stand face to face with Reverend Ray once more. Ray apologizes to Billy, saying the Lord must be on his side for him to still be alive. He tells Billy to go away and hide while he brings judgment upon Juarez and his men. You unleash upon the bandits, fighting through the various contraptions in a tricky gunfight. You make it to the treasure where you find Juarez. You do this boss fight where you dodge dynamite, deal with goons while Juarez is shooting at you. Eventually you best him. He's hurt and demands the gold or he'll butcher Molly. Ray tells us about his little brother, William. He used to very much be a sinner, but William was a man of the Lord. Ray had met Juarez before, which was when he first saw Marissa, Billy's mother. Thomas and him fell deeply in love with her, and tensions rose until one day they stood face to face in the cavern with the gold. Thomas got the girl, so he wanted the gold. The conflict got heated and William stepped between the two. He pulled into his coat. Thinking he was reaching for a gun, Ray shot him dead, only to find that he was holding a Bible. It was this moment that turned Ray McCall into Reverend Ray. He swore off all evil and all violence to continue his little brother's mission to spread the word of the Lord. As we begin, Ray is pushing a wagon into Juarez Fort. At first they think it's the gold, turns out it's a Gatling gun. You proceed to mow down anyone foolish enough to step to you. This section actually gets pretty hard. You're in the fort and Juarez men storm you from everywhere, and you're just one man against all these guys. After the fight for your life, you blow up the door with a cannon and get inside. The fight continues through every room until you make it to the basement. Here you'll need the key to the cell that holds Molly, but this guy has it, and you're gonna have to fight him for it. You make it to Molly. Before you can save her, Juarez begins throwing down dynamite, and you gotta shoot at them before they hit the ground. After a while, they set the cell ablaze. Calm Water's words are starting to get through to Billy. He doesn't want to run anymore. He's tired of being afraid. He's gonna return and help Molly and Ray escape. The boy from earlier gives you a bow and arrow. You hop into the fort, destroy the bandits, and knock over this water tower to put out the flames in the cell. Now you gotta unlock the door so they can get out. You fend off more bandits until you're face to face with Juarez. He tries to persuade Billy to join him once more, but he stands firm. Now you'll be dueling. You defeat him and make your way down. You find the two and begin making your way out. But wait, Juarez isn't dead. He shoots Ray and he collapses. He was wearing armor. Now you must fight him hand to hand and you knock him out. Meanwhile, Reverend Ray asks God for forgiveness as he blames himself for everything. He begs for one final chance to make sure Billy and Molly gets to live. As Juarez takes one last chance at Billy's life, the Reverend gets one last chance at his. This plays out like the duels. Everything slows down and you gotta aim and shoot Juarez, sending him straight to hell. Shortly after, Ray dies as well. In the end, Billy says the reason he ran in the first place is because it's all he knew how to do. He'd been running from everything and everyone his whole life. Calm water helped him realize this and muster the strength to fight back. He gains a strong self-image as Billy Candle, and as we watch the scene where Ray has been buried, the game ends. This was a pleasant surprise of a game. It basically jumps back and forth between two different level classes. It has arcadey one-man shooty sections and platforming sections. I mean, I think I made it pretty clear which one of these I like the best. I find the platforming to be quite clunky. The simplicity also makes it rather boring. The scenery is its only saving grace. The world design is beautiful. The levels also take you through quite a few different set pieces. The bridge, the mountains, and the fort. Each of these have its own charm while staying true to the overall aesthetics of the game. The shooting section saves this game completely. They're so fun. You feel so cool while running around as the Reverend mowing down everyone in your path. The abilities also add a layer to the gameplay. The ambushing with the bow and arrow also felt really good. It's so satisfying to hit a long shot with that thing. This is definitely what the game should have centered around, and it's also the thing that Techland takes forward. The story is the main focus of the game, so let's look back at that. Billy is a young man who leaves home to find his fortune. He was looking for the mythical lost gold of Juarez. He isn't successful and we meet him as he arrives back home. He deals with many different characters that each remind him of why he despises this town. As he gets near his stepfather's farm, he hears screaming and rushes in to find Thomas, his stepfather, and Marissa, his mother, murdered. The local Reverend Ray McCall, known simply as Reverend Ray, sees Billy standing over the bodies, then the hunt begins. Billy decides he's gonna run to Molly, who's a girl he met on his adventure. Ray chases him all the way there. When Billy gets there, so does Ray. He helps some Texas Rangers with tackling Molly's farm. Turns out they aren't Rangers, they're bandits and they have kidnapped Molly. At the same time, Ray shoots Billy thinking he killed him. This is when Ray realizes that he's been wrong this whole time and he needs to make it right by saving Molly. Billy survives and he's recovered by a man named Calm Water, who tells him that he needs to stop running and finally face the hunters if he ever wants to defeat his fears. But the bandits figure out where the two are. They kill Calm Water and kidnap Billy. Turns out they're working for a man named Juarez, who also happens to be Billy's father. He wants his medallion so he can find the entrance to the cavern where the gold is, but Billy lost it when he was shot by Ray. Juarez gets all mad and says he has till sundown to recover the medallion. Billy doesn't find it, but he does find the lost gold of Juarez. You see, the myth came with a riddle that says you need to find 3 graves and look through the one with the poor man. Billy remembers exactly what the medallion looks like, so he finds the gold. Juarez followed him through and while escaping, Billy bumps into Ray again. However, now they're friends. The two of them save Molly. Ray is killed by Juarez, but not before Ray can kill him too. The young couple buries Ray, and that's where the game ends. This story pretty much touches all Western tropes: greed, revenge, and redemption. They all want to find the gold for themselves. Ray wants revenge for his brother and redeems himself by saving Molly and Billy in the end. The character of Billy is that of a young man with ambitions, finding himself through the struggle and learning to stay true to himself. Ray almost plays like a force of nature throughout the first half of the game. He warns Billy and plows through anyone in his way. It's almost like he's supposed to represent the inevitability of death here, with him constantly being right on Billy's tail, and he seems to always find him wherever he goes. It isn't until his redemption arc that he starts to feel human, right after the raid on Ferguson Ranch. In 2009, Techland announced the next game in the series, Bound in Blood. The fact that Reverend Ray's gameplay received the most praise led to them fully committing to the arcadey action-oriented gameplay. Early on, they had also decided to go the prequel route. This game would cover Thomas' relationship with Marissa, Ray turning to God, and William's death. When they went back from the first game, they discovered something rather interesting. It would take place in the 1860s, coinciding with the Civil War. That's how a pretty big part of the game came to be. Now, most of it takes place right after 1866, which is a bit after the war ended. Despite extensive research into this period, Techland was very open about the fact that historical accuracy wasn't really at the forefront of their minds. They took many creative liberties. So let's dive in and discover what happened to Ray McCall and his brothers. As the game starts, we see Thomas and Ray in a standoff with Marissa and William watching. Ray accuses Thomas and Marissa of betraying him. As the camera zooms in on William, we hear a single gunshot ring out. William says that he wanted so desperately to lead his brothers to the light of God, and blames his own failure for the fact that they are now mortal enemies. Then we go back to 1864, during the Civil War. General Sherman is going through Georgia, leaving great devastation in his wake. The brothers' father was killed at Antietam, and their mother is sick. William left seminary to run the family farm, while Ray and Thomas are still fighting in the war. Their regiment is currently very close to the farm, fighting off Union forces. That's where we start, as Ray in the trenches. You're getting shelled, and I must say it's really cool to see the Civil War portrayed like this. You gotta get your men to plug a hole on the left flank. When you get there, the shooting starts. This time you can actually aim down sight and the ragdolls make a return. You do the same on the right. Afterwards, Ray wants to go to the river to help his brother, but you're made to do some mop-up. You go through the forest and the camp. Ray tries to get a counterattack by the river going again, but a sharpshooter rudely interrupts you. As you're dealing with them, Ray gets increasingly anxious about his brother's situation. Eventually you get to HQ and you ask General Barnsby for permission to lead the counterattack. The captain tells Ray that they're pulling back out, but Barnsby says Ray can go ahead, and if he can make a breakthrough, he'll support the assault. You make it there, and they're in the middle of a fierce firefight. You decide to flank around. Here you learn Ray's ability. You enter bullet time where you tag enemies and then he shoots them. Pretty much like Deadeye in Red Dead Redemption. After that, you charge the trenches themselves. After a brief fight, you get there. Here you go into some CQB and you figure out the cover mechanic. The player character will automatically duck behind cover and lean up to fire. It's a neat idea, but there is some problems with it, like how suddenly being thrust behind a crate can throw you off completely. You fight through the many Union soldiers in your way before you find Thomas. Ray's happy to see him alive, but despite recapturing the trenches, the situation is still very grim here. He's rigged the bridge, but can't detonate it from here. Union soldiers charge across the bridge and you fend them off with a Gatling gun, tearing them to pieces. Then you'll have to silence the cannons. That's when you're subjected to an assault crossing. You get to use the cannon here, which was great fun. Now it's time to blow the bridge. After rigging, you blow it up. However, the shelling begins again. You're waiting for Barnsby's men, but only a sergeant shows up. He tells you that Barnsby has ordered a withdrawal. You gotta get to Jonesboro. The McCalls refuse because their home is right in the way of the Union advance. They end up pulling their guns. They're gonna go defend their home even though they'll be charged with desertion. William recounts his brothers coming home after deserting. He couldn't believe it, but he knew why. Now you play as Thomas. He's the agile one in this game. He has the rope and can climb. He also has a different ability, which you find out very quickly. He basically locks on targets and slam fires the revolver. You quickly realize that the Federals have been here, with all the bodies around and the fact that they show up pretty soon after starting. As you hurry along, you see farmsteads on fire as well as more devastation. You run into this man who says they took over your house too, but he doesn't know whether something happened to William and their mother. The fight continues and you make it to this cornfield where you learn about stealth and throwing knives, which are great fun. You deal with a Gatling gun before getting on a horse and riding to the home. You're forced to fight through the property as well. You breach the house. You also get some quick draw here that works much like Ray's ability in the first game. You reach the mother's room where William is as well. She died during the night. You can't stay there, so you decide to go to the harbor to find a ship. Here you get into another vicious gunfight where you also blow up a fucking steamboat. The McCall brothers vow to return and rebuild their home when the war is over. A few hours after they make their escape, Barnsby shows up. He promises that he will have Ray and Thomas's heads for their desertion, be it tomorrow or years from now. We're in 1865 now. The Civil War is at an end, but Barnsby remains determined to end the McCalls. Meanwhile, the brothers have gone west and still hope to rebuild their home someday. Thomas and Ray had become very cold and apathetic from the war. They stole and killed without a care. William barges into this saloon to find his brothers fighting over some girl. William urges them to behave. Eventually, it comes forth that Thomas had slept with the sheriff's daughter. The sheriff shows up right after. He is very upset with the two brothers. You gotta duel him now. Here you also find out that you can choose between Ray and Thomas before each mission. Like said earlier, each of them have their own abilities and skill. The dueling has been improved a bit. You gotta move around to keep your opponent in focus while keeping your hand as close to your gun as possible. After killing the sheriff, you get into a gunfight with the deputies. You go through the back alleys until you reach this stagecoach. You take the coach while under fire and begin your getaway. The next part is really cool. You fend off your pursuers as they surround the wagon. It gets pretty tense. Eventually, you ditch the coach and take the horses. William is very anxious about the fact that you just killed a federal marshal. Due to the heat on them now, they're gonna go to Mexico. Ray says he heard of an old Aztec treasure hidden outside of Juarez. The brothers are gonna find it and use it to rebuild their home. William says the two others are like mad dogs and rides off. Ray promises to kill Thomas if he ever steals another girl. Then the others follow William. William is desperate to turn the others to the light. We're at a native tribe now. The chieftain running River has gathered a council to discuss starting a war. He believes that the gold of Juarez belongs to them and he will fight anyone who opposes them. The council is trying to talk him out of it. He needs to buy weapons and wants to send his son to get them. Seeing father, his son, is also against this whole war thing. Running River continues to urge him and he eventually gives in to prove that he's a real Apache. He agrees to go and find a cellar. One of the elders says that Running River has doomed the tribe. He stands firm and tells them to prepare for war. The boys have made it to Mexico looking for the treasure. The locals say that anyone who tries to find it gets mad with greed. This madness is what they call Call of Juarez. Anyways, the boys are gonna try and find it to rebuild their home. They're sitting in this little cantina discussing the chances that the gold is real when she shows up. Marissa, we know her as Billy's mother from the first game. As she walks in, she steals the gaze of every man in the cantina, including Thomas and Ray. When she goes to leave, some of the other lowlifes tries to stop her in a not very nice way. They tell her that Mr. Devlin would like to see her. She refuses and tells them to back off. They get too handsy and the brothers step in with their guns. Marissa runs off and the cantina erupts into gunfire. After that exchange, you hear that the meanies have got Marissa again. William wants to get the sheriff, but the other two decides to just continue the onslaught. They tell William to stay back while you chase down the guy that has Marissa through the town and his goons. Eventually, William does come to Thomas and Ray's dismay, but you must continue. You tear through more and wind up in this villa. You breach and kill even more of Devlin's goons. After going through here, the guy from the cantina walks out to meet you. They call him a Rattler, 'cause he's fast. He's wanted all over the South. You put a hole in him and move towards the church where they took Marissa. As the fight continues, you discover gun stores. These are spread out over the levels and can be used to restock or buy guns in better condition. Shortly after, you find her in the church. The bandits aren't done with you yet though. You fend them off until unexpected assistance arrives. It's from a man named Juan Mendoza, but we know him as Juarez. He thanks you for saving his girlfriend from the other guys. Ray and Thomas are visibly disappointed with this revelation. To show his gratitude, Juarez invites you to a party. William is not happy that Ray agreed to this, but Thomas and Ray quite like Mendoza and his boys. William feels that he's lost his brothers. What worries him more, though, is how both of them seem enamored with Marissa. Juarez has a job for the two. It's about this Devlin guy. Juarez and him are both looking for the treasure, which obviously means their interests conflict. He wants you to get Devlin to, disappear. Ray and Thomas agrees to William's dismay. William still doesn't approve of the job, even though Devlin is really evil. It's not his brother's place to punish him. You've tracked him to this mine and the shooting starts immediately. You start by clearing a little camp before moving into the complex itself. The fight is intense and the whole pace is fast. You arrive at Devlin's house. Ray demands that he leaves town. He says they have an attitude problem and walks back inside. The fight picks up again. You go through, clearing his house, only to discover that he's escaped through the courtyard. You try to get this gate open, but this structure collapses onto it. You decide to go through the mine and meet your brother on the other side. You plow through the mine and meet Thomas on the other side, or if you're playing as Thomas, you'll meet Ray. You continue after Devlin. You shoot your way through the rest of the mine in very fun arcadey action. You get to Devlin. After defeating his bodyguard in a duel, you get your hands on him. He tries to bribe them, but Ray closes in with the gun. Then William shows up, and probably the funniest moment in the entire series happen.
Do not violate the word of God, the fifth commandment. Thou shalt not kill.
Well, it's a little late for that, little brother. Look around.
William continues trying to dissuade Ray, but he says it's too late and kills Devlin. William wants to leave, go back to the US, but both Thomas and Ray are overcome with greed. Not for the gold, but for Marissa. It appears that she's falling for Thomas. Now you get your first open level. These are actually really cool. You can do some jobs for money and buy a better arsenal. These jobs vary quite a bit from bounty hunting to escort. You can also just go right ahead to the next level. I do recommend looking around and getting some pointier sticks. After this, you go back to meet Juarez. He thanks you for taking care of Devlin and explains that he has a better approach to finding the gold. That's when Seeing Father walks in. He has approached Juarez for the rifles. The Apaches has the medallion and you need to find the entrance to the cavern. He'll get the rifles in return for the medallion. They've gone to Arizona to meet a gunrunner. They set up camp as Juarez goes off to meet this gunrunner. But as he returns, everything has changed. The gunrunner is in jail and the Pinkertons has confiscated over 300 rifles. So yeah, you gotta bust him out. But before we do that, we get this interaction between Marissa and Ray. The conversation turns very flirtatious immediately. It seems they plan to take the medallion from Juarez together. As you ride in, you can already hear the party going. You fight your way to the jail and make an opening. You tear through the building only to discover that they've moved the gunrunner. Now you tear through even more enemies. You help your brother with various obstacles and even use a fucking Gatling gun. When you get to this square, you need to fend off this ambush. After that, you clear this house and eventually find the gunrunner. He's this guy in a Confederate uniform with bandages all over his head. He's not exactly talkative either. Now he'll lead you to the rifles. But this guy decides to step to you first. You end him. You fend through more people until you escape in these carriages with the rifles. Back at Juarez, the gunrunner is revealed to be none other than Barnsby. He still wants the McCalls. Juarez wanted to renegotiate their deal, and Barnsby wants Thomas and Ray in this renegotiation. Thomas and Ray no longer speak of rebuilding the farm. Ray tells the other two of Marissa's promise to run away with him if he can get the medallion. This enrages Thomas, but he stays silent. He rode off in silence. Thomas confronts Marissa, saying she sold herself to Ray for gold. Marissa defends herself by saying she meant he should take it for all of them. She confesses her love for Thomas and they kiss. Now you have another one of those open levels. You do jobs and get more guns. After you go to meet Juarez again, his renegotiation with Barnsby is taking quite a while. As you approach the hideout, you see a suspicious concentration of Confederate uniforms. The brothers enter and ask where Juarez is, and they're met with Barnsby, who says that Mendoza will no longer be employing them. Barnsby says he swore an oath to kill every deserter and that because of cowards like them, his wife and child was murdered as Atlanta fell. Then, of course, he says something cartoonishly racist so that we don't get too sympathetic. Then the brothers get captured. Barnsby never admitted defeat. He collected an armada of Confederate soldiers to continue his cause. Together with them, he wreaked havoc across the South. Barnsby is interrogating the brothers, trying to figure out why Juarez wanted the rifles. William ends up confessing their payment for a medallion. He tells him about the lost gold of Juarez and that Juarez is currently on his way to meet the Apaches. Then Barnsby wants them hanged. You beat this guy with a chair and break out. Now you make your way down the scaffolding. You tear through every Confederate, swing around, and cower over heights. Eventually you make it to these horses and ride off. Barnsby decides the best move is to follow them to the medallion. He wants the gold so he can resurrect the Confederacy. Then we get more racism. They confront Juarez, but he assures them that Barnsby lied to him too and that he didn't know what Barnsby wanted with them. As they continue, the group is soaked in a tense silence. Seeing Father eventually just leaves in the night. So now they're out there alone. You spot the Weeping Rock, which is where the Apaches are. Now you gotta escort Juarez and the goods to the village. Eventually a wagon gets stuck and you gotta hold the enemies back. Eventually Marissa and William run off. Thomas goes for Marissa and Ray for William. When returning, the wagon full of rifles has been stolen. You go through the American wilderness, fending off ambush after ambush until you reunite with your brother and Marissa. Here, Ray overhears Marissa and Thomas' conversation and reiterates his threat from earlier. You go back to the river crossing to Juarez. You have to recover the merchandise. After a tough fight, you find it by this camp. As you make your escape, you have to fend off the pursuing enemies with a Gatling gun. This part is really fun. Eventually, you meet back up with the Apaches, but it seems that Seeing Father has discovered that the rifles are useless. Basically, Juarez bought 300 defective rifles from Barnsby for almost nothing, so he could swindle them into giving him the medallion. And it's revealed that it was William who told him about the broken guns. However, because of William's honesty, Seeing Father has his brethren lower their weapons. They tell them to leave, but they'll have to pay. The Apaches want their horses, guns, wagons, and Marissa. Juarez has no issue letting her go since he sees this as her betrayal because as far as he knew, she was the only one that knew about his scheme. They do also let the brothers rest at their camp. William fears that Ray can explode at any second, leading to a bloodbath in the camp. Seeing Father took them aside to speak with them alone. He wants to help them find the medallion to prevent his father's war. He will take you to where it is. It's hidden away because it's believed to be cursed. It's currently on Navajo territory. You go on the mission. You approach slowly on a rowboat, taking out Navajo scouts. You get to the village and the fun begins. Eventually you get to this broken bridge. You fight even more, search this lake, and then you find a sacred place of the Navajo. Here you get ambushed, but they refuse to shoot. It would defile the sanctitude of the place. Thomas and Ray continue though. You get the medallion and go off in this boat. After shooting some pursuers, you get to this strong current, but you make it to calm water. Here, Seeing Father reprimands them for insulting the Navajo ancestors. When they get back, Ray and Thomas have a little argument over who gets to hold the medallion. Seeing Father says they aren't worthy and that William should be the one to carry it. He's gonna teach him its secret to make sure that the other two will never find the treasure without William. They plan to get Marissa out too. Now it's clear to William that his brothers have been corrupted by greed. The two brothers get out before the place where Marissa is. They egg each other on about who should be with her. Then they fight. Before any move can be made, Barnsby shows up with his army and begins raining hell. You fend off the Confederates, but the cannons are really doing a number. You blow this rock down on top of them. After a few hours, the camp has been completely destroyed. Barnsby demands the medallion for seeing Father's life. Running River ends up promising the medallion. He takes Seeing Father to a ghost town and waits for the medallion. William and Marissa seem to have been abducted by someone. The brothers will go into the ghost town to bust out Seeing Father and kill Barnsby. You start by going house to house and clearing them, looking for your target. Eventually you stand face to face with Barnsby. You get ambushed and another firefight ensues. The captain from earlier challenges you to a duel but tries to trap you. Running River luckily has your back. You kill him. Then you go upstairs to find Seeing Father clinging to life. Running River is devastated, and now you go after Barnsby. You track him down to an old church where you shoot him down from this tower. Before he passes away, Seeing Father reveals that it was Juarez who captured Marissa, William, and him. He was sold to Barnsby. Running River realizes that he's the one who led their people to slaughter. He pulls his knife and walks over to Barnsby. The McCalls leave him to it. They go to save William. Running River will end his war and change his name to Calm Water, so he's the guy that saves Billy from the river in the first game. William is being interrogated by Juarez regarding the medallion, but he keeps saying, "My faith is my shield." Juarez tries to explain to William that the two aren't so different, but William points out that Juarez is rather violent in comparison to him. Eventually he blacks out and wakes up to Marissa standing by him. William asks why she's tugging on the hearts of both of his brothers, why she's ruining them. She explains that she has always let men take advantage of her in hope that they will protect her since she feels very weak. She wanted to go with Ray at first due to the fact that he's quite strong, but for the first time in her life, she actually fell in love when she met Thomas. She gives him a gun just in case, but William refuses to use it. It turns out Juarez was listening in on the whole conversation. Just outside, Thomas and Ray are about to assault the fort. Juarez wants to see if he can make William break his pacifist ways by making him defend himself against this guy. He ends up killing him, leaving him devastated. Juarez continues his interrogation, but he's interrupted by the other brother's arrival. He orders his men to kill William. Outside, Marissa confronts him. He says he's gonna kill her when this is over, but she confesses that she's pregnant. He says he'll wait till the child is born, and then he gets knocked out by Marissa, who grabs the medallion. You hop into the fort as Thomas. You have to get 3 horses to this hideout. You move through an improved version of Juarez Alcazar to fight his goons and steal the horses. The henchmen try and burn you out, but you put out the fire and spill more blood. You win this duel, and then Thomas stands restless at the gate. Marissa shows up and tells him that William is dead. She says they have to go now, but Thomas doesn't want to leave Ray behind. She has the medallion and ends up talking him into going after the gold instead of waiting for Ray. Right after, we get Ray's perspective on the events. William did not die because Ray showed up just in time to rescue him. William is near catatonic. Ray assures him that there's nothing wrong with self-defense. The two begin their evacuation. You shoot your way out, and when you get outside, Ray is confused as to where Thomas has gone. The exit is full of enemies, so you gotta find a different way. You shoot your way through the basement and into this cave where you duel Juarez. Ray finds out what Thomas did. He left with Marissa to take the gold for himself. William and Ray finds the entrance only to see that Thomas is already there. William realizes that he now has to go to drastic measures if he wants to save his brothers. William and Ray make it to the treasure room. The confrontation quickly gets heated as both brothers are in a standoff. Ray feels betrayed, and now he's gonna deliver on the promise he made back in Arkansas. William blames himself for his brother's greed. He realizes he has to take action now or things will get really ugly. He steps in between them, telling Ray that he will not let him kill Thomas. He says he'll have to get past him. He reminds Ray that he is a murderer too now. He says he's reaching on 3, counts, and then reaches into his bag, and then Ray shoots him dead. William falls to the floor as the Bible he was reaching for flies out of his hands right to Barnsby's feet. He reveals that calm water didn't butcher him but just let him go. The two brothers set their grief aside and take on the Confederates. You end up in this little boss fight with Barnsby. I had to do this a couple times because you basically get swarmed by henchmen as Barnsby lays down hell. Eventually it comes down to one final duel where Barnsby is killed for good. In the end, we hear from Ray. He and his brother stood strong together. William's death was him sacrificing himself to save Ray from the greedy hands of evil. He wanted Ray to find God, and his sacrifice made him do it. They left the gold knowing its curse. That's how Ray became Reverend Ray. He dedicated his life to finish William's work by preaching and putting down his guns. He was even the one to join Thomas and Marissa in marriage. Ray just hopes that wherever William is now, he knows that he didn't die in vain. Because of his sacrifice, his family remained whole. The game ends. This game is a big step up from its predecessor. They played to their strengths by making the game around the fast-paced, arcadey gunplay. You still have two characters with unique abilities, but both complement this style of game. The presentation is also much improved. It shows like this cinematic spaghetti western, with proper cutscenes and some pretty good voice acting for the most part. One critique I do have is the repetitive nature of the levels. This is one drawback of them committing to the arcade style. Eventually all the chapters seem to bleed together as you do mostly the same thing again and again. They do try to space it out with those open levels, but even that didn't entirely work as the jobs descended to more of the same. All in all, I really enjoyed playing this game. It was fun and super entertaining. This game takes us back around 20 years from the first. We're basically told Reverend Ray's origin story. He and his brother Thomas fought in the Civil War, where they became deserters after leaving their regiment to go defend their home where their mother and little brother was. William is the moral compass in this story. He's a very religious man who practices what he preaches and is seen by everyone as the best of the McCall brothers. Their home gets burned down as a result of the war. After, they decide to go to Mexico to find the lost gold of Juarez to rebuild their home. They are warned that the treasure is cursed as it causes men to go mad with greed and die. When they get there, Thomas and Ray get an eye for a woman named Marissa. Here they end up working with a man named Juan Mendoza called Juarez. The tension between both brothers escalate as greed takes hold of them. They both want the gold and Marissa for themselves. Meanwhile, William tries desperately to break this trance they find themselves in. It all culminates to the final scene of the game, which is where Ray shoots and kills William. As impactful as it is, it did leave me scratching my head a bit. Now we know how this story ends from the first game, and throughout the entirety of this game I kept questioning how anyone would ever think that someone like William would even think about shooting someone. Then the moment came. William really makes it seem like he's about to kill Ray. He basically did the whole saying to a cop, "Get ready to meet God," as you quickly pull out a Bible meme. I mean, that's literally what he did. I do have the theory, though, that William wanted Ray to shoot him. Perhaps not kill him, but hurt him at the very least. He even says himself that he's about to go to more desperate measures before it happens. Perhaps he thought that hurting his little brother would finally make him realize how fucked up he's become. Anyways, William basically sacrifices himself to save the brothers, who then abandon the gold and leave to try and live somewhat normal lives again. Anyways, I really enjoyed this game. I thought it was a step up and had a good narrative. In February 2011, Call of Juarez, the Cartel, was announced. It was also made public that they were abandoning the Wild West setting for a modern neo-Western one. It would be set in modern-day Mexico. Many people called out the fact that they removed the series' one point of distinction. June 2011, a month before release, IGN said that the game should be delayed by quite a bit. Journalist Ray Gallegos had tried some samples of the game and found it to be barely in a playable state. He tried games that wouldn't be released for another year that were miles ahead in development. Either way, it was released on the 19th of July 2011. It was a disaster. The game had a very poor reception. The gameplay was a huge step back. It was full of bugs and the presentation was awful. The gameplay was bad, but controversy would arise from the contents itself. Community leaders all over Mexico accused Techland of exploiting cartel violence, which is a very real source of fear and suffering in the whole of Latin America. They were afraid that seeing this portrayed as an action flick could potentially cause youth to idolize that sort of life. All in all, it was said that the game's portrayal of these issues was tasteless and insulting. Now, I tried to find out where and how I could play the game, but as of 2018, the game has been completely removed from all storefronts. Thus, we've arrived at the last game in this video, Call of Juarez Gunslinger. This is without a doubt my favorite. This game is so fucking fun and has a very unique plot that the devs take full advantage of in creating a unique presentation. We return to the Old West, where an old legendary bounty hunter named Silas Greaves arrives in a saloon and tells the quote-unquote true story behind all the dramatized dime novels made about him. As we move along, not everything is as it seems, and not everyone is who they claim to be. The game was announced in November 2011. In September the following year, it was properly revealed to fans. We're back in the Old West. The game would feature legendary figures from this period like Billy the Kid, Pat Garrett, and Jesse James. With this inclusion, they wanted the narrative to almost be a reflection of how this period is romanticized in media today, putting the legends of the period up against their real-life counterparts. This is achieved by having our perspective character be someone who isn't afraid of dramatizing his own exploits. This decision bled over into almost every aspect of the game. The design took on a comic book style with cartoonish models and world design. The cutscene also mainly consisted of hand-drawn comic book panels. The game was released on May 22nd, 2013. This game had a much better reception. People seem to universally agree that this game perfectly captures why this series was loved in the first place. Over-the-top arcadey cinematic action. You take part in thrilling gunfights across dynamic levels. The game's narrative was interesting and funny, and the actors did an incredible job. Let's dive into this forgotten gem of a game. To start, we're in 1910 Abilene, Kansas. Silas Greaves rides on the street and enters a saloon called Bull's Head. As he states his name to the bartender, he's recognized by other patrons. He says he's got a little business here in Abilene. The young man, who appears to be a fan, buys a beer for Silas. He asks to hear some great stories, and another man with the name Jack already seems very skeptical of Silas' exploits. Dwight, the kid, asks to hear about when he faced off against Henry Plummer, since according to his dime novel, that's when his career started. He's told to not believe everything in those dime novels. He says it goes all the way back to when he was riding with Billy the Kid, one of the most legendary outlaws from this time. They also mention the Lincoln County War, which was a real thing. Anyways, you take control of Silas in 1880 as he's making his way to Billy's hideout at a little town called Stinking Springs. The reason for their alliance is that one of Billy's enemies is someone Silas wants dead. He's not gonna tell the story of that right now, so now you play through this event. You go along this path where you run into some of Pat Garrett's men. Sheriff Pat Garrett is another real figure in this game. You dispatch them. As you close in on the town, you can hear gunfire from the hideout. Billy's hideout is completely under siege when you get there. In this game, the ability you have is bullet time. Everything slows and targets are highlighted. So you basically tear through the enemies, climb water towers as the firefight rages. Eventually you enter the hideout through the back. Upstairs you find Billy the Kid. Every notable character has these cool, stylized comic intros accompanied by a few myths surrounding the figure. You hold back Pat Garrett's men for a bit longer until you get overrun and it's time to retreat. You gotta go get some horses. Shortly after, you get another shtick for this game. In some scripted areas, you get this cinematic slow-mo, cinematic slow-mo parts where you gotta do QTEs, or in this case, just pull the trigger. You make it to the stables where you meet Pat Garrett. Dwight interrupts and tells the story the way it's written in a dime novel, which leads to you defeating him in a duel. But after, Silas takes over again and explains that he was actually just knocked out and arrested by Garrett. Both Silas and Billy was arrested and sentenced to hanging. It's April 1881 and you're in jail. Silas is still ready to get out and go after the guy. Eventually you start to hear shooting as Billy makes his escape and throws a key to you. You go to the entrance and find Bob Ollinger's shotgun. Bob Ollinger is also a real figure. This mission is based on a real event and I'll talk more about that in a bit. You fight your way to the roof. You hop from roof to roof until you get to street level. Pretty soon, you're facing off against the whole town, and they throw a new enemy at you, the Shielder. As their name suggests, they carry a big shield, and you gotta shoot around it or in the little peeky hole it has. In the meantime, Billy uses the rockets to escape. You shoot your way down this big street, taking fire from rooftops, balconies, and alleys. Eventually, Bob Ollinger catches up with you. Silas says that the two faced off in the street. You defeat him in a duel. Then he says that Pat Garrett finally killed Billy 3 months after. Now, I said that this whole level is based on a real thing. The game gets the time right. Billy the Kid is arrested by Pat Garrett in December 1880 and is sentenced to hang in April 81. He was guarded by Jim Bell and Bob Ollinger when he escaped. This is where the game takes its liberties. We have to remember that the whole theme of this game is legend versus reality. Silas is supposed to be a bit of an unreliable narrator. In reality, Ollinger had just gone for lunch at Wortley Hotel just across the street from the jail. That's when Billy overwhelms Jim Bell, shoots and kills him. And that's when Billy steals Ollinger's shotgun that he had left in the building and went to the second floor. Up there, he sees Ollinger leave the hotel to see what the hell was going on. Then Billy shouts, "Hey Bob," and shoots him in the chest, killing him instantly. Then the game gets it right with how he dies. Pat Garrett tracks him to another hideout where he sneaks up on him and kills him. I love how the game plays with these real parts of Wild West history by incorporating them into Silas' story. It's fun and it's entertaining. Next, Silas went to Mexico until he realized he wasn't wanted. Then he joined up with the Rurales to track down the Cowboys, a gang with figures like Curly Bill, Johnny Ringo, and Old Man Clanton. Silas once again has personal reasons to go after those boys. We're in Guadalupe Canyon, August 1881. We finally get a name for the guy Silas is after, Roscoe Bob Bryant. However, right now he's after Ringo. In this mission you're trying to track down Clanton. You dispatch these guys robbing a stagecoach. When you go to inspect the damage, more bandits attack from the rocks above. Silas says that he was attacked by Apaches, so in-game the enemies are Apaches. Then he corrects himself by saying he was attacked by cowboys that attacked him like Apaches. Then you play the section again, but with enemy gangs instead of Apaches. The game does this a lot, which I think is really cool, where stuff changes in-game as Silas corrects himself or remembers new details. They completely overwhelm you and you're running out of ammo, so you're forced into this cave. You run and run as bullets miss you by millimeters. Eventually you come upon a dead Apache warrior whose ammo you steal, so now the tables turn. You're the one hunting them. You massacre the cowboys with gun and dynamite until you run into Old Man Clanton himself. He's up high on a Gatling gun. You gotta run from cover to cover up this hill until he's in range and you can throw dynamite at him. Now, as stated, Clanton was a real person. Newman Clanton was known for stealing and reselling cattle around the Mexican border. Clanton did die on the 13th of August 1881 in Guadalupe Canyon, which is when and where this mission takes place. Once again, it happened quite differently. He had just picked up some more cattle from Curly Bill, who we'll meet pretty soon, and embarked on a 6-day journey across the US border. Early morning, August 13th, is when Clanton and his group is ambushed by Mexican lawmen, where he is shot and killed. He was actually cooking breakfast over open flame when he was shot and fell face first into the fire, charring his body. One of them did survive and told Ike and Billy Clanton, the sons, about their father's death. Like in the game, and also like in the game, they mistake their attackers for the Earps, which is what leads to the legendary duel at OK Corral, where Billy dies but Ike survives. As you can probably tell, I'm really enjoying looking into the actual history that this game is based on. Next, Silas has tracked the rest of the cowboys, including Curly Bill, to a sawmill where they were armed to the teeth. This is a really cool level. You navigate the massive machinery in a massive gunfight. Now, throughout this mission, it becomes increasingly clear that Jack, one of the guys sitting with Silas in the bar, is very skeptical of Silas' story. Now, he is telling a story where he's butchering a whole gang by himself. He does own it, though. After tearing through the lumber mill, you end up facing off against Curly Bill in this storage area. You move between the planks as gang members descend on you. Meanwhile, you gotta deal with Curly Bill. After killing him, you go to Turkey Creek Canyon to duel Johnny Ringo, who you kill. Now, Curly Bill actually died from being shot in the stomach by Wyatt Earp, but Ringo's death is shrouded in mystery. His body was found in Turkey Creek sitting against a tree. His death was ruled a suicide due to the bullet wound in his head, but other details do conflict with this, like how it appears that someone had tried to scalp him. Ringo was known to be suicidal, though. After getting a handsome sum for the cowboys, Silas decides that bounty hunting is indeed for him. That's why he went after Henry Plummer. Here we see Silas actually confirming Dwight's dime novels, as he says that he indeed went toe-to-toe with Plummer. Silas is basically now in the process of gathering resources to take on this Bob Bryant. You arrive at a gold mine where Plummer's gang, known as the Innocents, was plundering. You make your way through the establishment. They have this part where you're in a hefty firefight in this area full of explosives. You gotta watch your shot. Eventually, you get to this rail bridge. Here Silas had a choice on how to proceed. You start by entering this little mine portal. In here, you tear through guards and end up leaping out while getting a few jump shots. Then you fall to the bottom and get crushed by a rail car. Then we go back to the bridge where he says that he ended up taking the latter option, which is to continue along the treacherous bridge. You shoot your way across the scaffolding as Silas tells the story of Plummer. He's a sheriff that lived a double life, basically. He's a lawman on the front, but runs this whole scheme in the back. This is very true to the real Henry Plummer. But Plummer and his gang operated in the 1850s, and Henry Plummer died in 1864. This is supposed to take place in the 1880s. It's these little discrepancies that add to the unreliable narrator aspect of the story. You plop into this little arena-looking thing where you meet the man himself. He runs around on the edges, throwing dynamite as his goons storm you. It can get pretty overwhelming, but you take him down. It's after this that Silas says he begins considering himself a bounty hunter. Silas goes after an outlaw named John Wesley Hardin in Kansas, which is where he was told where Bob Bryant was. He went to Abilene, which is the town he's sitting in as he's telling the story. You start right in the thick of it. The town is up in arms as you fight through the streets. Eventually you make it to the very saloon they're sitting in the present. In here Hardin confronts Silas. However, Silas decides to rewind a bit to before the shooting started. Basically, Silas confronts Hardin's men outside by a camp. This leads to him fighting into town. From here, you do the same. You fight your way into the saloon where you meet Hardin. However, this duel takes a little twist. You see, Hardin is intoxicated, so he forgets to count his shots. When he ran out, Silas simply had him arrested. From here, Silas tells the true story of what happened to the real John Hardin. He was shot in the back of the head while playing dice. He was involved in more than one gunfight in Abilene, Kansas, but none that happened in the time that this is supposed to take place. Dwight asks more about the hunt for Bob Bryant, but Ben tries to change the topic by asking about his other adventures, like if he ever went after some of the tribesmen. It's worth noting that there has been this really weird tension between Silas and Ben. I bring this up because it'll be important later. But for now, Silas will tell the story of his meeting with Grey Wolf. Grey Wolf was an Apache, and it seems he was made up for this game. One thing both Silas and Grey Wolf have in common is that revenge is their main motivator. You arrive in the mountains. Silas recounts his paranoia as a Grey Wolf, the animal, howls. Silas seems to sympathize with Grey Wolf and his group. He regrets going after them in his usual violent ways. Eventually you enter this cave as the Apaches continue to ambush you. You get to a grotto where you finally meet him. He walks out of the shadows, no weapon, no fear. He warns Silas about being so consumed by anger and hate. If he doesn't let it go, it will eat him from the inside. You're brought into this vision where you shoot at various attacking enemies. Grey Wolf says that Silas will return and kill even more men as the darkness inside takes over. The snakes of the past will poison him or something. As you return to reality, Grey Wolf's men attack from all sides. You fight out onto this cliffside where you do a bit of platforming. You're chasing him through the cliffs, but not to kill him. Silas now wants him to explain what the hell he just told him. As Silas recounts the fights with many Apache warriors, Jack seems to finally have had enough. He finds the stories to be way too outlandish. Dwight very quickly jumps to his defense and asks how the story ends. Silas continues the chase, but it's as if Grey Wolf just up and vanished. He never saw him again. Now we move on to his meeting with the Daltons. Ben says he was there himself that day. The Daltons were lawmen who turned outlaw and robbed various places in their short lifetime as a gang. This leads to the shootout in Coffeyville, Texas. Ben was part of the local militia who fought them as they robbed the local bank. You play as Ben. The Daltons are basically robbing two banks on the same street on the same day. Not only that, but the locals knew them. You fight your way into the bank. Here you shoot the Daltons. Dwight interjects and says that he knows all about that day from the dime novels. He says it's high noon and some marshals were on a rooftop opposite the bank. Among them was a legendary lawman who had no intention of letting the Daltons go. He charged to the back of the bank and took position on the high ground. He hopped onto the roof and entered from there. He cleared each room of outlaws until entering the back where he shot the three Daltons. Then Dwight says his name was Silas Greaves. He was the last man standing in the end. Then Silas apologizes and says that just isn't how it happened. First off, it was evening, not high noon. He was late to the party and the shooting had already escalated as he arrived. The Daltons were already making their escape. Here you're back to basics with the fighting through the town levels. Eventually you encounter Emmett Dalton, who stayed behind to cover his brothers. He has a Gatling gun and you gotta traverse the arena from cover to cover. After you defeat him, Ben interjects and says that Emmett was the only one who survived the robbery. He was heavily wounded, to which Silas says, "Who do you think did that?" Now, the Coffeeville robbery was a real thing, and yes, Emmett was the only Dalton brother to survive. However, in this game, Bob and Grat survived the initial robbery, but is currently being chased by Silas and groups of vigilantes. You go into this swampy ghost town where the very lively natural atmosphere is replaced with the ghostly, deathly one as a damp fog settles onto the swamp. As enemies appear, you've been separated from the vigilantes, so you have to stand to them alone. Pretty soon after, you end up having to fend off a whole attack wave. You clear the area and the ghost town falls silent once again. This barn appears before you and you gotta get up top to see if you can spot your friendlies. As you get further into the swamp, Steve falls asleep and you have this part where Silas says he was surrounded by natives as you fend them off. Then he says it was to test Steve's attention. There was no natives. Silas begins talking about how sacred it is to be brothers. This isn't the first time he's done this. Every time there's been a mention of some brothers, he talks about it. This is gonna be important in a little bit. You fight through more of the disorienting swamp before you come upon a steamboat. The party is puzzled as to how a steamboat ended up in a swamp and whether it was a stern or side wheeler. The whole thing is fortified, so you have quite a fight on your hands. Your friendlies show up as you make your way to the ship's bridge, but when you enter, they betray you. You get knocked out and wake up in a flaming wreckage. The Daltons had bought out the vigilantes. As Silas is making his way out of a burning ship, the others debate the Titanic and the unsinkable myths surrounding it. You make it out to this Gatling gun and proceed to mow everyone down. Eventually, Bob and Grat comes forth and you gotta duel them both. They die. We finally get to know why Silas is after this Bob Bryant and the others. Back in 1868 in Juarez, he and his brothers were running cattle. One night after his brothers had gone to bed, Silas found a poker game. He won over and over again. The next day, 3 of the others at the poker game caught up to them. It was Johnny Ringo, Roscoe Bob Bryant, and some guy named Jim. They demanded their money back. They took all they had and then left them to hang. Then Bob put an old Spanish coin in Silas' mouth and said, "I won't have it said I left you with nothing, boy." The branch eventually snapped and Silas was the only one still alive. His 2 brothers were dead. Then it makes sense that he speaks so highly of the brotherly bond. Silas was gonna avenge them. He had already taken Ringo. He heard that Bob Bryant was riding with a gang called the Wild Ones, led by Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You arrive at the scene of a very destructive train robbery. You climb some of the wreckage and the shooting begins. Now you gotta cross the broken bridge on unstable carriages while under fire. This whole level is super fun. You go from carriage to carriage in these bullet time action sequences. You rip through the train and end in a Gatling sequence. Bob Bryant does escape again. You do have to face George Curry. You kill him in a duel. Next, it's 1904 and Silas is after the Wild Bunch once more. Kid Curry escaped and is running the show, and Silas hopes Bryant is among them. You assault this camp where you find their plan. They're gonna blow another bridge to rob another train. You fast forward to the day where you fight through the overpass and remove all dynamite. You even have to stop the fuse. As you make it back atop the cliffs, you meet Kid Curry. He's sitting under a tunnel with a Gatling gun. You have to dodge the bullets and use dynamite to bring the tunnel down on him. You duel him, but you only wound him. Silas demands to know where Bryant had gone. He says he went with Butch and Sundance to South America and takes a shot. You dodge and blow his head off. Silas knew he'd never find Bob Bryant in South America. The others asked to hear about Jim. Jim was riding with Jesse James. Dwight knows him as the greatest outlaw to ever live. He was a train robber. Steve corrects the kid by saying there's nothing great about the lives these people lived. Anyway, Silas went after the gang. This level is super fun too. You're on a moving train that's being robbed. You breach the different carriages and kill the occupants in bullet time. It's great. Silas talks more about the James gang and why Jim was with him. Then he decides that it's time to take a piss. That's when the others begin talking among themselves. Jack thinks this is just some old drunk that wants free booze. He doesn't even think he's Silas Greaves. Dwight defends him, obviously, while Jack continues to denounce Silas' story and has a go at Dwight. Silas returns and the level continues. You tear up to the locomotive, but when you get there, it blows up. Then you duel James on the train. Silas only wounds him though, then he continues after Jim. He tracks both him and Frank James, and he ends up back in the wilderness. Here you fend off some natives. Eventually you get to this camp in a clearing. Suddenly everything starts to look a little familiar. It's where Silas faced off against Grey Wolf. Like he said, Silas has returned and he's killing many more men. Silas asks Ben if he ever thinks about death before singing his rendition of Oh Death. It's a very moody moment as the screen darkens like old paper and a storm comes in. Then Ben asks if he ever got Jim Reed. Now this is interesting because Silas never said Jim's last name, yet Ben seems to know exactly who he is. Silas confirms that it was indeed Jim Reed, but first you're facing off against Frank James. This is an interesting part. Frank is basically a sharpshooter and you gotta go cover to cover as he continuously pulls back. Eventually he enters his mountain cabin and you blow it off the cliff. Frank survives though and climbs back up. He says he's done with the outlaw life and lets Silas have it Reed. You fight your way into this cave, which is the same cave that Grey Wolf lived in. First you face off against his goons and then you put a hole in him. After that, Silas says he's pretty beat. Dwight says it's a shame that he never got Bob Bryant. However, Silas says he actually got one more chance at him. 6 months before the present, Silas heard that Butch and Sundance were back and rallying the old gang. Silas went after them hoping to find Bryant with them. You go through a misty forest and fend off some ambushers. Meanwhile, Silas says it's been so long that he might not even recognize Bryant. Or maybe he was now worse than him. You come to another swampy ghost town and end up pinned in this shack as hell rains down upon you. Eventually you get knocked out. When you wake up, the whole town has fallen silent. Not a soul in sight. You get ambushed by ghost after ghost. The ghosts of all the people Silas had killed or ridden with. Eventually the Sundance Kid shows, and after defeating him, Butch Cassidy shows up. But the Sundance Kid ain't done yet. You end up in a Mexican standoff. You gotta switch between the two and shoot both in time, which you do, killing both. Jack says they were killed in Bolivia, but Silas stands by a story. Jack has had it though. He says there is no Bob and that the old man ain't even Silas Greaves. Then Dwight asks if he's been lying this whole time, to which Silas simply says, not the whole time. Jack tells him to leave, and then Silas pulls out the coin. And it's revealed that Ben, the bartender, is Bob Bryant. That explains the weird tension between the two and why Bob already knew about that it was Jim Reed. Bob swears that he's changed, so now you get to choose redemption or revenge. If you choose revenge, Silas gives Bob a gun. Now you must duel Bob Bryant. The others take cover as you take down the last man on the hit list. As Bob lays dead on the floor, Steve asks what he's gonna do now that it's over. Silas says it don't matter 'cause his soul is long gone. If you choose redemption, Silas says he was prodding Bob to see what kind of man he had become. Silas went from a regular man to a cold-blooded killer, and Bob had walked that path in the opposite direction. Then he asks Dwight what his name was again. He says his name is Dwight Eisenhower. Yes, that Dwight Eisenhower. Dwight explains that he wants to be a soldier. Silas says to do it right and not be consumed by anger and violence. He gives Bob his coin back and leaves, and the game ends. Gunslinger is all Call of Juarez should be. Fun, arcadey action in the Wild West, making you feel like a Western legend. The game is fast, responsive, and feels great. It takes you through various set pieces like Old Town, the Untamed Wilderness, and moving trains. All the while, it's oozing with style. The comic book-like presentation adds a lot of character and suits the narrative very well. The themes are well implemented as the levels will actively change as Silas remembers more details or changes his story. We're introduced to real historical figures in fictional encounters, which is the realness coming in, but the gameplay contrasts it well with the bullet time segments, reaction QTEs, and straight-up bullet dodging. The story is that of Silas Greaves, an aging bounty hunter who goes to Abilene, Kansas, where he meets some fans of his in a saloon. Here he begins telling the quote-unquote real stories behind the legends about him. When he was a young man, his brothers were killed by some outlaws that were pissed about losing in poker. Silas' story revolves around him going on the hunt for his brother's killers. Now, his stories have a lot of dramatization, but not all of it is false. The players can sit and ponder about how much of it is real and how much was played up or straight up didn't happen. This is obviously done to reflect how romanticized this era is, full of legend but with an often grim truth underneath, about the brutality of the gangsters that roam the Wild West. The world also reflects this with how many set pieces consists of old collapsing structures covered in foliage, visions of an old dying time slowly being covered in new flashy parts that weren't there to begin with. This is the most apparent theme. Another one is that of vengeance and how it corrupts. In the ending, Silas straight up says that he thinks he might be worse than Bob Bryant ever was. Over the course of the game, you kill many more men than Bryant. The final confrontation isn't about justice or Bob getting what's coming. It's about Silas' ability to forgive and move on. Silas also says in the end that he's become an old, bitter man with no family or friends. For most of his life, he's been consumed by this revenge quest so much that he forgot to also live his life. In that way, Bob also took his life that day in Juarez. Anyways, there you have it, the 4 Call of Juarez games. The story of a series that started out decently, got progressively better, tried something new, didn't work, and then in the end, it reached its full potential. So that's what I have for you today. Bye.